Hi everyone and welcome to Vintage Digitals. I'm doing today's video to answer 3 questions that I get a lot, and that is, do you keep batteries inside your watches while they're on display? How do you store your watches and how do you care for your watches? How do you clean them? And let's go with the first question. Do you keep batteries inside your watches while they're on display? The answer is yes. I try to keep batteries inside most of my watches, and the reason is simple. Actually, there are more reasons. I like to engage with my watches. You know, digital watches, they have many features: TV, pulse meter, metronome, voice recorder, and so on. From time to time, I like to walk up to my collection and engage with their watches. That makes collecting more interesting. Another reason would be that when I have friends over and people look at my collection, I like them to engage with the watches, and they're more interesting if you can actually test their functions. And everybody is always amazed at the fact that they had that specific technology back then. So that's another reason. And the last reason is it's easier to trace a fault to a watch if you had battery inside them. Maybe you left your house for a holiday and the temperature dropped. Maybe it was too hot. Maybe you shook or, God forbid, dropped the watch while you were cleaning it. If you have batteries inside, you can actually tell if that fault is due to something. Of course, if it's not the battery being depleted, because you'll end up measuring the battery of the watch, and if it's depleted, then there you have your reason. But again, having a battery inside the watch, it's easier to see if it's becoming a fault. Maybe the display is starting to dim, then there you go, you have a display issue, or the capacitors have dried out, and so on. As you can see, I don't manage to keep up with all my collection, so if a battery dries out, depletes in a watch, I immediately remove it. I don't keep that batteries inside the watches, you shouldn't too. And then I leave the watch there until 3 or 5 watches get their batteries depleted, and at that point I go to the store and replace batteries for all. Now the second question, how do you store your watches? Well, I like to keep my watches on display, and the shelves I use are from IKEA. They're called Gnedby, yeah. And the cubes, they're also IKEA, but they don't make them anymore. But I feel that these are easier to use because you can set the height of your shelves, you can remove shelves if you have a special geometry that you need for a watch, like I did with this Seiko metronome. So yeah, that's how I store them. And the last question is, how do you care for your watches? How do you clean them? Well, I use basically 3 things to clean my watches, and that is good old trusty Windex, well, in this case it's Ajax, a rag, and I use this makeup brush, which is a fine brush, and I will show you in a minute exactly how it's done. Anyway, it's time to clean my collection, so let's get to work. Now that we've got the watches away, we're going to use a rag, a secondary rag, because we have a rag special for watches. Not special for watches, it's a rag that I only use on watches. You can use any rag, and I use a different one just to dust off the dust. Okay, now on to the fun part. And the way I like to clean my watches is, first I use this makeup brush that I talked about earlier, and it's the finest brush. These can be bought at all the malls in the world. There are plenty of Boots, small shops. I think I paid for this $5 or something like that. There are really expensive ones, but you're not really doing makeup, so a cheap one will do the trick. And first I like to dust off any particles or bigger particles of dust, or I don't know, any other particles in the air that might scratch when you use the rag in the end, need to be removed. And we can just dust off everything from the watch. It just looks like I'm one of those makeup channels. But anyway, make sure you dust off even the holder. And after you're done with the watch, we put the rag aside. We take good old trusty Windex. We spray a bit. Always don't spray towards the watch, always spray on your rag. Make sure it's not too moist. And then you can just clean the watch away. You won't be able to scratch it because you've removed any particles to begin with. And that's basically how you do it. And it's a good idea if you have a huge collection to take a picture before you remove them from the shelves, if you have a particular order in which they go. So hopefully I can remember. And that's the process I go through about every 6 weeks, because it does take me a while. Thanks for watching this video. I hope I cleared up a few dilemmas, and if you liked it and found it useful, give it a thumbs up and do hit the subscribe button, as I try to release LCD watch related videos as often as I can. Until next time, bye!